Hey everyone. I know things are, well, pretty bleak right now.
Yeah.
Especially after this last election.
Yeah.
Feels like everything we've been working towards, as progressives is just,
Slipping away.
yeah,
Well,
slipping away.
apparently.
And to be honest, when we look at what's happening globally this week, it's
Not great.
not great. It's a mess out there.
Yeah.
Conflicts are escalating, economies are teetering on the edge, and there's so much political maneuvering going on, and it seems like
Power and profit over people.
every time.
Yeah, it's striking how these events that seem isolated are actually deeply connected.
Yeah.
And it reveals this disturbing pattern. Like we're watching a global system that is designed to,
Benefit a few
benefit the few
at the expense of the many.
at the expense of everyone else.
It's really disheartening.
It is.
We've got this hostage situation happening in Pakistan after a train hijacking. A former president was arrested in the Philippines,
Right.
and Canada's new prime minister is already facing a potential trade war with the U.S.
Thrown right into the fire.
Yeah, it's enough to make your head spin.
And when you look closer at each of these events, you really start to see the failures of the current approach.
Yeah.
This one that prioritizes aggression.
Isolationism.
Yeah, isolationism and these short-sighted economic policies that are just,
Benefiting the few.
yeah. It's a stark reminder of why we need the progressive agenda. With its focus on diplomacy and cooperation and social justice, it's more vital now than ever.
More than ever.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's dive into some specifics then.
Yeah.
Let's start with this ongoing war in Ukraine. The proposed truce seems to be on shaky ground.
Yeah.
Putin responded with a classic maybe.
Classic Putin.
What's he up to this time?
Oh, it's a textbook Putin tactic.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. Shrouded in ambiguity, completely designed to manipulate the situation to his advantage, demanding clarifications, questioning who will monitor the truth, even suggesting a call with President Trump.
Wow.
It reeks of stalling tactics while Russia just continues to advance on the battlefield.
Yeah, it's infuriating, He's playing games with people's lives, and the international community seems,
Powerless.
powerless to stop him. Zelensky called out Putin's response, said it was highly manipulative,
Right.
and suggesting that Putin is actually afraid to admit to Trump that he wants this war to continue.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
It's a dangerous game, and it really highlights the tragic consequences of a world order that allows these strong men like Putin to act with impunity. And the longer this war drags on, the more it undermines the progressive vision of a peaceful world, built on diplomacy and cooperation. It makes you wonder, is this the kind of world that we want to live in? One where might makes right?
Yeah.
Dialogue is replaced by threats and violence.
It's a grim picture.
It is.
And unfortunately, the situation in the U.S. doesn't offer much hope either.
Right.
The stock market just took $1 trillion nosedive.
Yeah.
And everyone's pointing fingers at President Trump's policies.
It's a clear sign that this current economic model, one based on reckless deregulation and tax cuts for the wealthy, is just fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
Trump might claim that the economy is booming, but the reality for everyday people tells a very different story.
Totally different.
JP Morgan's prediction of this looming recession and that record low public confidence in his economic policies paint a much bleaker picture.
It's almost comical how he talks about a booming economy while we see these massive layoffs orchestrated by people like Elon Musk.
Right.
And this is all happening while government spending is at record highs. It just doesn't add up at all.
It's a perfect example of how trickle-down economics simply doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
This idea that enriching the already wealthy will somehow benefit everyone else is a myth.
It is.
And it's been debunked repeatedly. The current administration's policies are exacerbating inequality, leaving working families struggling to make ends meet while corporations rake in these record profits.
It's a slap in the face, fairness and social justice.
Yeah.
What we need are bold policies that prioritize the needs of working people,
Absolutely.
like investing in education, healthcare, and a living wage.
Right.
Instead, we're getting tax cuts for billionaires
Yeah.
and deregulation that benefits corporations at the expense of
Everyone else.
everyone else.
It's a clear example of how the current system is rigged against the interests of the majority. And until we fundamentally rethink our economic priorities, we're just going to continue to see this cycle of booms and busts that leave ordinary people bearing the brunt of the consequences.
Absolutely. Speaking of policies that seem designed to cause chaos,
Oh, yeah.
let's turn our attention to Iran. This maximum pressure campaign is back.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to see where this is headed.
It's a repeat of the same failed approach that led to that disastrous withdrawal from the previous nuclear deal.
Yeah.
This administration seems determined to bully Iran into submission.
Right.
But history has shown that these tactics rarely achieve their intended goals. And Iran's response, drawing parallels to the humiliation of Ukraine's president, it's a clear indication that they are not going to back down from what they see as an attempt to undermine their sovereignty.
Absolutely. And this upcoming nuclear summit with China and Russia is a clear sign that Iran is exploring alternative solutions outside of this Western-dominated framework.
Right.
They're not going to play by the rules of a system that has repeatedly failed to treat them with respect or acknowledge their legitimate concerns.
It's a bold move.
It is.
And it really underscores the need for a more inclusive and equitable global order. This current system, dominated by a handful of powerful nations, is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
We need a new approach that values dialogue, diplomacy, and mutual respect.
Yeah, it's such a shame that the current administration seems so intent on pushing us in the opposite direction.
It is.
Their actions are creating a more dangerous and unstable world.
All right.
And they're undermining the very values that progressives are fighting for.
It's a stark reminder that the fight for a more just and peaceful world is far from over. Yeah.
We need to be more vigilant than ever in challenging these harmful policies.
Yeah.
And advocating for a progressive agenda that puts people and the planet first.
Absolutely. Let's move on to a region that's been ravaged by conflict for far too long.
Yeah.
Syria. The recent outbreak of violence is a heartbreaking reminder of the human cost of war.
Over 1,300 people killed.
Yeah.
Many of them innocent civilians caught in the crossfire between this new rebel government and remnants of the Assad regime.
Right.
And the reports of revenge killings by security forces are chilling.
They are.
It's a stark reminder of the brutality that can erupt when societies are fractured by conflict and mistrust.
It's a tragedy that the international community seems unable to prevent these cycles of violence.
It is.
And with external forces meddling in the region, it's hard to imagine a path towards lasting peace.
The situation in Syria is incredibly complex. There are so many actors vying for power and influence.
It's true.
What's clear is that the current approach, this focus on military intervention and regime change, has only exacerbated the situation.
Yeah.
Made it worse.
Yeah, we need a new strategy, one that prioritizes diplomacy, humanitarian aid, and support for local peace-building initiative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The violence in Syria is a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict.
Yeah.
And that urgent need for a more peaceful and just world order.
Yeah.
It's a call to action for all of us to stand up for diplomacy, human rights, and a global system that values cooperation over confrontation.
Well said.
Thanks. So this brings us to another pressing issue: the pursuit of justice and accountability on a global stage.
Right.
The arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines has sent shockwaves through the international community.
Yes.
It's about time someone held him accountable for this brutal war on drugs
Yeah.
that resulted in the deaths of thousands of people.
Thousands.
The fact that the International Criminal Court had to step in is a damning indictment of the Philippine justice system's failure to address these atrocities.
Duterte supporters are crying foul, claiming he made the Philippines safer.
Right?
But that's a dangerous and misleading argument. His tactics were nothing short of state-sanctioned violence, a blatant disregard for human rights and the rule of law.
Totally.
His arrest sends a powerful message
It does.
that those who commit such crimes will eventually face justice, even if it takes international intervention.
It's a major victory for the progressive pursuit of justice and accountability.
It is.
And hopefully a sign that impunity for these types of crimes is becoming increasingly difficult.
It's a glimmer of hope in a world that often seems to reward those who abuse their power.
Yeah.
But it's just a first step.
Yeah.
We need to continue to push for a global system that upholds human rights and ensures that those responsible for atrocities are held accountable for their actions.
From one challenging situation to another, let's shift our focus to Canada, where the newly elected Prime Minister Mark Carney is facing a pretty daunting task.
Yeah, he's got an impressive background in economics, but zero political experience.
That's right.
Can he navigate these turbulent waters of global politics, especially with an increasingly aggressive U.S. breathing down his neck?
It's a trial by fire.
Yeah, for sure. He's stepping into a role previously held by a leader who was criticized for being too passive in the face of Trump's bullying tactics.
Yeah.
And this escalating trade war between the U.S. and Canada adds another layer of complexity.
It does.
Canadians are looking to Carney for a steady hand
Yeah.
and a willingness to stand up for their interests on the world stage.
He's certainly not mincing words. Comparing Trump to Voldemort,
Bold move.
it is a bold move, and it suggests that he's not afraid to challenge the status quo.
Yeah, it's a refreshing change from the previous administration's more conciliatory approach.
Yeah.
Carney's pledge to rebuild ties with India, diversify trade partnerships, and push back against Trump's protectionist policies
Right.
is a clear signal that he intends to chart a new course for Canada in this global landscape.
It's a risky strategy,
It is.
but it might be just what Canada needs to navigate these choppy waters of global politics and economics in this new era. It's definitely an interesting development to watch. Now, before we get into what all of this means for the progressive agenda, let's take a moment to catch our breath
Yeah.
and process the sheer amount of chaos unfolding around the world. We'll be right back to break down the implications of these events and explore what we can do to fight for a better future.
Sounds good. Welcome back. I don't know about you, but taking a deep dive into the state of the world can be exhausting.
You really can.
We've covered a lot of ground, and frankly, it's a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah.
From the war in Ukraine to the economic turmoil in the U.S., the resurgence of hardline policies in Iran, that heartbreaking violence in Syria, the struggle for justice in the Philippines, and a new, untested leader in Canada trying to navigate this volatile global landscape.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all.
It is. It feels like everywhere you look, the forces of regression are winning.
Yeah.
Authoritarianism is on the rise, inequality is widening, and the planet is burning. It's a gut punch for anyone who believes in progress, diplomacy, and a more just and equitable world.
It's understandable to feel that way.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that we as progressives have a responsibility to resist this tide of negativity.
Yeah.
We can't afford to succumb to despair or apathy.
Right.
Now more than ever, we need to engage, to analyze, to understand the root causes of these challenges, and to fight for the solutions that can lead us towards a better future.
You're right. Giving up isn't an option. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about what stood out to you from all the events that we've discussed.
Okay.
What connections did you see? What sparked your concern? Or maybe even like a glimmer of hope?
For me, it's this alarming trend of leaders prioritizing power and profit over people and the planet.
Yeah.
Whether it's Putin's blatant disregard for human life in Ukraine, Trump's economic policies that benefit the wealthy at the expense of everyone else, or the continued exploitation of resources in places like Syria and the Philippines.
Right.
It's clear that the current system is broken. It's designed to concentrate wealth and power in the hands of a select few while leaving the majority to struggle.
And it's not just about individuals. We're talking about entire systems that are rigged against the interests of the many. The financial system that rewards speculation and short-term gains over long-term sustainability, the political systems that are increasingly dominated by corporate interests and wealthy donors, the media landscape that amplifies division and fear-mongering.
Right.
These are all interconnected forces that are holding back progress.
Exactly. And this is where the progressive agenda becomes so crucial.
Okay.
It's about recognizing these systemic flaws and advocating for fundamental change.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond tinkering around the edges and start demanding bold, transformative solutions that address the root causes of these problems.
So what are those solutions? Where do we even begin when the challenges seem so overwhelming?
Well, we need to start by shifting our priorities.
Okay.
Instead of obsessing over economic growth at all costs,
Right.
we need to prioritize human well-being, social justice, and environmental sustainability. This means investing in education, healthcare, affordable housing, renewable energy, and creating a more just and equitable economic system that works for everyone.
For everyone.
Not just the wealthy few.
That sounds great in theory, but how do we actually make these changes happen in a system that seems so resistant to progress?
It requires a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
We need to mobilize at the grassroots level, build strong social movements, and demand that our elected officials represent the interests of the people, not corporations or special interest groups.
Right.
We need to challenge the dominance of corporate media and reclaim the narrative.
Yes.
We need to educate ourselves and others about the issues and advocate for policies that align with our values.
It sounds like a long and difficult fight.
It is.
And honestly, after this election, it's hard to feel optimistic about our chances of success.
I understand your pessimism.
Yeah.
But we can't afford to give in to despair.
Okay.
Throughout history, progress has always been a struggle. It's about organizing, mobilizing, and never giving up on the fight for a better future. And remember, we're not alone in this.
Right.
There are millions of people around the world who share these progressive values and are working towards the same goals.
It's a reminder that solidarity is crucial. We need to build bridges across borders.
Yes.
Connect with like-minded individuals and organizations, and support each other in this fight for a more just and equitable world.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that our struggles are interconnected and that we're stronger when we stand together, whether it's supporting the Ukrainian people's resistance to Russian aggression, advocating for economic justice in the U.S., or demanding accountability for human rights abuses in the Philippines.
Right.
We need to see these struggles as part of a larger fight for a more just and humane world.
You mentioned economic justice earlier.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on what that looks like in practice?
Sure.
What kind of policies should progressives be pushing for?
Well, we need to fundamentally rethink the way we structure our economies.
Okay.
The current model, based on endless growth and the pursuit of profit at all costs, is simply not sustainable. It's leading to widening inequality, environmental destruction, and social unrest. We need an economic system that prioritizes human needs, promotes fairness, and ensures that everyone has access to the resources they need to thrive.
So what are some specific examples of policies that could move us in that direction?
Well, we need to start by addressing the issue of wealth inequality.
Okay.
This means implementing progressive taxation policies that require the wealthiest individuals and corporations to pay their fair share.
Okay.
We need to invest in public goods like education, healthcare, and infrastructure, which benefit everyone and create a more level playing field.
Right.
We need to strengthen labor unions and fight for policies that protect workers' rights and ensure a living wage.
And what about the climate crisis?
Right.
It feels like that's often treated as a separate issue, but it's clearly intertwined with all these other challenges.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The climate crisis is a symptom of a deeper systemic problem, our unsustainable economic model. We can't address climate change without addressing the root causes of our addiction to fossil fuels, our overconsumption, and our disregard for the natural world.
So what are the solutions on the climate front?
Well, we need a rapid transition to a clean energy economy. This means investing in renewable energy sources like solar and wind, phasing out fossil fuels, and creating green jobs that benefit local communities. We need to prioritize energy efficiency, sustainable transportation, and regenerative agriculture.
Right.
And we need to hold corporations accountable for their pollution and their role in driving climate change.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's also empowering to realize that there are solutions out there.
Yeah.
And that we have the power to demand change.
That's the key takeaway here. We can't afford to be passive observers.
Right.
We need to be active participants in shaping the future we want to see. And that starts with understanding the issues, engaging in the political process, and holding our leaders accountable.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the solutions, and the importance of engagement.
Right.
But I think a lot of people are feeling discouraged right now, especially after the recent election. It's hard to see how we can make progress when the forces of regression seem so powerful.
I understand that feeling. But remember, history is full of examples of social movements that overcame seemingly insurmountable odds. The civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, the fight for LGBTQ plus equality.
Yeah.
These were all movements that faced immense challenges,
Yeah.
but ultimately triumphed because people refused to give up.
It's a reminder that change is possible, even when it feels impossible.
It is.
But it requires persistence, dedication, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
Exactly. And it requires hope.
Yes.
We need to hold on to the belief that a better world is possible and that our actions, however small they may seem, can contribute to making that world a reality.
It's a message we all need to hear right now.
We do.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to ask you, what's one thing our listeners can do today to start making a difference? What's one action they can take, no matter how small, to contribute to the fight for a more just and equitable world?
That's a great question, and honestly, there are so many answers.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as educating yourself about the issues, having a conversation with a friend or family member, donating to an organization that aligns with your values, or volunteering your time to a cause you believe in.
Right.
Every little bit helps.
It's about taking that first step and then another and another.
Yeah.
It's about building momentum and never giving up on the fight for a better future.
Exactly. And remember, we're in this together. Let's support each other, stay engaged, and keep fighting for the world we want to see. Now let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll delve into some specific resources and strategies that our listeners can use to amplify their impact and become more effective advocates for change.
Okay.
We'll also explore some of the glimmers of hope that are emerging around the world, reminding us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit of resilience and the pursuit of a better future continues to shine through.
We're back. And I got to say, despite the pretty heavy topics we've been discussing, I'm feeling a bit more energized after that last conversation.
Me too.
It's a good reminder that even when things seem bleak, there's always hope.
Yeah.
And there's always something we can do to make a difference.
I agree. It's easy to get bogged down in all the negativity, but we have to remember that we have agency.
Yeah.
We're not powerless.
Right.
Every action we take, every conversation we have, every choice we make, it all contributes to shaping the world around us.
So let's talk about those actions.
Okay.
In the last segment, you mentioned that there are specific things our listeners can do to become more effective advocates for change.
Yeah.
What are some of those strategies?
Well, first and foremost, it's about staying informed. We need to be aware of the issues, understand different perspectives, and critically analyze the information that we're consuming. There's just a lot of noise out there.
There is.
So it's important to be discerning and to seek out reliable sources.
That's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in those echo chambers of social media or to be swayed by biased news sources. How can listeners make sure they're getting like a balanced and accurate view of what's happening?
It's about diversifying your sources. Don't just rely on one news outlet or one social media platform.
Right.
Seek out perspectives that challenge your own assumptions.
Yeah.
Read independent media, academic journals, reports from reputable organizations.
Okay.
And most importantly, engage in critical thinking. Don't just accept everything you read or hear at face value.
Right.
Question the sources.
Question everything.
Yeah, consider the biases.
Right.
And look for evidence to support the claims being made.
That's great advice. Once we're informed, what's the next step? How do we move from awareness to action?
It's about finding your voice and using it. That could mean writing to your elected officials, attending protests or rallies, volunteering for organizations that align with your values.
Right.
Or simply having conversations with friends and family about the issues that matter to you.
Yeah.
Every voice counts, and the more people that speak up, the more pressure we can put on those in power to make change.
I love that. It's a reminder that we don't have to be policy experts or professional activists to make a difference.
No, not at all.
We can all contribute in our own way, using our own unique skills and talents.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that activism takes many forms.
Yeah.
It's not just about marching in the streets or shouting slogans.
Yeah.
It can be about educating yourself, supporting local businesses that are committed to sustainability, making conscious consumer choices,
Yeah.
or simply being kind and compassionate to those around you.
It's about living our values in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
And inspiring others to do the same.
Exactly. And it's about creating a ripple effect. When we take action, however small, it inspires others to do the same.
Yeah.
And those actions multiplied across millions of people can create such a powerful force for change.
You mentioned earlier that there are these glimmers of hope emerging around the world.
There are.
What are some of the positive developments that are giving you reason for optimism?
Well, despite the headlines, there are countless individuals and communities who are working tirelessly to create a better world. We see it in the grassroots movements, fighting for social justice, the scientists and innovators developing solutions to the climate crisis, the artists and storytellers who are using their creativity to inspire and connect us,
Yeah.
and the everyday heroes who are showing up in their communities and making a difference in the lives of others.
That's so inspiring. It's easy to lose sight of those stories when we're just bombarded with so much negativity.
Yeah, it is.
It's important to celebrate those wins, no matter how small,
Right.
and to draw strength from the collective efforts of people working towards a common goal.
Absolutely. And remember, hope is not a passive emotion.
Right.
It's a call to action. It's the belief that a better future is possible and the determination to make it happen.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
We've explored the challenges, we've discussed the solutions, and we've emphasized the importance of engagement. But ultimately, it comes down to this. What kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of future do we want to create for ourselves, for generations to come?
Those are powerful questions.
They are.
And the answers lie within each of us. We have the power to choose hope over despair, action over apathy, and solidarity over division. Let's choose wisely and let's create a future that we can all be proud of.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity, fueled your passion for change, and empowered you to become an active participant in shaping a more just, equitable, and sustainable world. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.